Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy tonight's narrations, please hit the like button and leave a comment, as every little bit does help. If you enjoy what I'm doing here on this channel and want to see it continue and grow, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you'll stay updated whenever I release new content. If you want to have your own stories narrated here on this channel, you can send those in to ashes2ashes, dust2dust stories at gmail.com. If you send a story in and I choose to read it, then I will give you a shout out to either your name or your internet handle in the video, as well as list you in the description down below the video that it appears. And now, without further ado, let's get into tonight's scary stories. My dad witnessed a ghost at his work. Okay. So my dad has always been that type of guy where he doesn't believe in anything unless he witnessed it for himself. He's a pretty macho guy and isn't into all the fairy tale and ghost nonsense. Yet that all changed for him one day. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon when my dad came home. He works the night shift at the old El Reno prison. He says it's a pretty laid-back job for the most part. He'll usually drive around the prison in one of the guard trucks or keeps watch in the towers. But one night, he was sent to do a sweep of the chapel, as to make sure no one was in there who wasn't supposed to be. His boss, let's call him Jack, told him to come back and check in with him after he had done so. My dad walked through the yard out to the chapel, and as soon as he walked in, he said he felt just a wave of nervousness come over him. He flicked on the old lights and walked in and began to check all around the room. After about a couple of minutes, he said a man, dressed in the same uniform as him, walked out from the little office at the back. My dad asked the man if he had already done the sweep of the chapel, and the man replied, "Yes, I'll take it from here." So, confused as to why he was sent out there to check the chapel, my dad just gave a little, "Oh, okay, I'll let Jack know." My dad returned to his boss about 15 minutes after he had sent him. Jack looked at him and asked, "How did you get done so fast? You couldn't have possibly checked the whole place in such a short amount of time." "Another guard's already there. Said he'd check it," my dad said, and I guess Jack didn't think anything of it. As long as the chapel was checked, everything was fine with him. Well, this is where it gets creepy. About 3 days after, my dad said he was walking down the halls of the prison and stopped to look at the display case of all the old photos of other guards in the past. As he was browsing the photos, he said his heart sank, his blood froze. One of the pictures he came across was that very same guard he had encountered in the chapel. only this guard was dead. Apparently, about 4 years before my dad started working there, a riot had broken out in the chapel, and a guard was stabbed to death, and that guard was the same man my dad had seen in the old chapel. But out of the 12 years of working there, not once had he ever heard about the riot until now. I don't know if they just don't talk about it, scared it might run off some newbies, or if it's just something a lot of them had forgot about. All I can say is, my dad is now a firm believer in the paranormal, and not once has he ever gone back into the creepy chapel. Never play with a Ouija board. This story happened in October of 2004, back when I was still a third-year high school student. My friends and I stuck around the school late at night after our annual Halloween party. We'd agreed to try out my friend's Ouija board. It wasn't the brightest idea, but we needed a thrill. We found a nice spot under a huge narrate tree and proceeded with our half-assed ritual. There were 5 of us, 2 boys and 3 girls. We were all expecting some kind of paranormal contact. Rumor had it our school was haunted, but we'd never really experienced anything firsthand. And it was Halloween, when all the spirits come out to play. We all wanted to get spooked. Also, we've never seen a Ouija board firsthand before, so we were pretty excited. Our school was an old Spanish colonial house, built in the 1800s, when the Spaniards still occupied the Philippines. We were in a section of the school that doesn't get used often, located beside a creepy old Jesuit house. People only go there when they need to use the restroom, store equipment on one of the sheds, or make out with their boyfriends or girlfriends. We sat down in the middle of an open space with only an exposed bare bulb nearby illuminating the surroundings. We were all having a laugh, scaring each other with what-if scenarios. It was your typical dumb kids doing dumb things. My friend who brought the Ouija board proceeded to place it in the middle of our circle. If I remember correctly, it was the glow-in-the-dark version, which we found hilarious. But it gave us the ability to see what was written in the dark. Not knowing what to do, and going after what we've seen in movies, we all proceeded to place our index finger on top of the planchette. We sat there looking at each other until one of us said, "What's next?" We didn't know if there was a proper way to start the ritual, plus the board didn't come with instructions, so we decided to just throw in a question. "Is anyone there?" I called into the darkness. "If there are any spirits living here, please talk to us." One of the girls joined in. We clearly had no idea what we were doing. Still nothing, not even the slightest bit of wind. One of my friends jerked the planchette, and the girl who brought the Ouija board screamed, breaking the silence. We all laughed at how ridiculous it was. After a bit of joking around, we decided to give it another go. We all placed our index fingers on the planchette once more and asked, if there's anyone there, we would like to make contact. Don't break the circle, one of my friends jokingly said. Shut up, I whispered. We were just about ready to give up when the wind started to pick up. The stillness broke, and the darkness around us seemed to move. Just a coincidence, we thought. Okay, don't break the circle, I yelled out. Is anyone there? I was excited. It was like a scene from a movie with dirt and dead leaves swirling around us. Guys, I'm scared. My friend sitting beside me said, my mom warned me about playing with forces we don't know. Did you die here? Were you killed during the war? Are you the headless priest that roams these halls? Do you know Jose Rizal, our national hero? Are you a hottie? My friend giggled. At this point, we were all throwing random, stupid questions. Nothing. This is bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore, my friend said, exasperated. We were all thinking the same thing. Just then, a group of dogs from the neighboring house started barking at us through the chain-link fence. These 6 dogs were growling and showing teeth. We all screamed, and without finishing the ritual, bolted right out of there. We didn't see each other until after Halloween break, and this is where the story gets creepy. One of the girls told us about a weird experience she had the night after playing with the Ouija board. She had gotten home late after hanging out with her friends from the neighborhood when she realized she forgot the keys to her house. So she called her brother up, who was then still sharing a room with her, and what he said crept the hell out of her. He swore she was already home. He claimed to have seen her walk in a while ago, and that she looked really tired, and saw her head straight to bed. Creepy, but no need to freak ourselves out, we all thought. Besides, her brother must have just been tired and seeing things. But then my other friend started telling us about an encounter that she had that Halloween night. She was going up to her room when the lights started flickering as she was ascending the staircase. Your typical horror movie visuals. Shrug it off to faulty wiring. But just then, she saw the door to her room open, and a dark figure stepped out and stood atop their staircase. You couldn't make out the entity's face, but she recounted that she couldn't move and felt utter dread as the figure stared down at her. No way, my best friend, who just joined the conversation, said in disbelief. Something happened to me as well. He recalled that he was sleeping one night when he woke up feeling really uncomfortable. He described his vision as having TV-like static, and a feeling of heaviness surrounded him. He looked around the room, and that's when he saw a bloody, charred face with piercing red eyes grinning at him through the window. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I almost had a run-in with death that night. After the ritual, I was sleeping in our sedan on the way home after fooling around with the Ouija board when I felt our car jerk. I woke up instantly, looking out the window. I found out that we'd been hit by a huge oil tanker. I panicked and leapt out of the car. Luckily, my mom and I survived the crash, since the front of the car was a total wreck. I still don't have an explanation why those things happened to us, but thank God nothing happened after that. I never played or got near a Ouija board ever since. Lady of the Hollow. When I was in my early teens, my dad would drag us to Kentucky every chance he got. 10 hours each way. It seemed to me most of our trip was driving. Finally, we would arrive at Aunt Lainey's home. God, I loved her. She had 9 kids. My cousin Ronnie decided that he would tell us about an urban legend called the Devil Lady of Trace Licking Hollow, or Holler, as he liked to pronounce it. Ronnie shared with us the following. Up on the outer ridge of this hollow, way above the tree line, lived a bitter old woman who hated everyone and everything. She was so full of hate that she started doing things to her neighbors. She took pets. When she would pass a neighbor on the road as they were walking beside the road, she would try to take a swipe at them. As this woman got older, she started looking into people's windows, scaring everyone, but she would always disappear by the time any of the family would come out of their house. Then, one family had had enough. The father grabbed his hunting rifle and made the hike up to the ridge where the old lady lived. When he entered her property, something was not right. It was too quiet. Then he saw her lying in the middle of her small garden, dead. Dead for a very long time. How could she still be terrorizing the whole hillside? He also told me to stay away from the windows in the deepest part of the night. I said, okay, thinking this was just a ploy to get me to go to sleep and not get out of bed. You see, I'm a night owl, my mother says. I've been that way since I was in her womb. So I walk upstairs and get into bed, and I cannot go to sleep. I start reading a book that I brought. The last chimes I remember were 3. I turn over and look toward the window, and I freeze. There, in the second floor bedroom window, was this hideous face. The most hideous face I had ever seen. Matted, long hair, skin so thin that some was there, and some just wasn't. Red eyes, yellow teeth, on the hag's head were horns. I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. I threw the blankets over my head and just kept praying the old hag would go away. The next morning, I came down for breakfast, and my aunt looked at me and said, "How did you sleep?" I said, "Okay, I guess." And when my aunt left the room, my cousin Ronnie looks at me and says, "Buffy, she always knows what's going on in her holler." My parents' haunted house. Please, someone help us. We don't know what to do. It's getting so bad in the 20 years. This, by far, is the worst. Both of my parents grew up in haunted houses, and of course my siblings and I have all grown up in a haunted house as well. At first, my parents thought my brothers just had an imaginary friend. His name was Joe. He lived in the closet. My brother woke up screaming in the middle of the night. I was a baby, so I don't remember, but I've seen pictures. My parents ran in there, and he had blood all over his sheets, and 3 very long cuts down his back. They had bunk beds. My other brother was on the bottom. My parents said he was so pale and wouldn't say a word. Things calmed down for a really long time, until I was about 10. I had one of my friends staying over, and we were staying up really late, playing games, and doing what little girls do. We started to hear scratching coming from outside my door. I had a cat, so I thought it was her. I went to open it for her, but no one was there, so we shrugged it off. Then it started again, and the doorknob started to jiggle, and it slowly opened, and there was a dark figure standing there, looking like it was out of breath. Its shoulders were going up and down. Then it lunged at us, and we screamed. My parents came running. Nothing, or nobody, was in the house. She never stayed again, and stopped being my friend shortly after. 9 years later, just little things were happening. Nothing too scary. My boyfriend, now husband, went off to basic, and I still lived with my parents. I was only 19. I had my dog Zeus, who was sleeping on my bed with me. He's a yellow lab. It was about 6:30 in the morning, and I had to be up at 8:30 for work. He woke me up by growling. Then I heard a weird voice speak into my ear, a language I didn't understand. When I started to open my eyes, it started growling in my ear. I opened my eyes fast, and my door slammed. My dog was standing over me, with his hair standing up, looking like he was about to attack something. Everyone was at work, and I heard banging coming from my parents' room. I got Zeus off of me. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room. Cabinets were opening and closing fast, and things were getting thrown everywhere around the room, and it wouldn't stop. I went to run out, and the door slammed shut. My dog, now running around the house, barking and growling, started running into the door. I said, "Fuck it," and ran out of there, grabbing my work clothes, my dog, and got the hell out. I dropped my dog off at my friend's and went to work early. When I got home, my parents' room was destroyed. My mother was crying. My dad was pissed. I told him everything. We decided not to talk about it again, and went on with the rest of the day. My brother still lived with my parents as well. That night, my door kept opening and closing, and I kept hearing running in the hallway, so I thought it was him. I slipped on my slippers and stomped to his room. I was going to yell at him to knock his stupid shit off, but when I opened the door, he was snoring. I woke him up, made him promise it wasn't him. He told me to leave his door open to see if he sees anything. I'm halfway down the hallway My brother yells at me to run to my room and not look back, but of course I turn around instead. As I turn, I see a large figure standing in his doorway, staring at me. It had large, red eyes, just staring at me. I froze and started to whimper. My brother, being the protective big brother, came charging, telling the thing to leave me alone. When he got to it, it disappeared. My brother ran to me and led me to my room and slept on the floor that night to stay with me. I didn't sleep. Now, a year later, I'm 20. My husband is away for the army at the moment, and we are waiting for our plumbing to be done at our new house. Last night, we had a bad rainstorm. I woke up to growling again, but I couldn't move. Out of the corner of my eye, there was the figure, with the red eyes again, just staring at me. Thunder started, and it opened its mouth so wide it could fit my whole head in its mouth. It had huge, sharp teeth and a long, skinny tongue. It started to scream. My ears started to ring. I wanted to cover them, but I couldn't. My dog half growled and half whined, starting to bark. My parents came running in, covering their ears, but stopped in mid-run when they saw the thing. My dad came running to me anyway, and picked me up and carried me to his room with my dog following. Zeus had his back to us so he could face the thing. He never took his eyes off the figure until it was out of sight. I finally was able to move, and I started crying and shaking uncontrollably. My brother lives here as well, with his girlfriend. We heard her scream. Then she started banging on the door, so my dad opened it, and she came running in, crying and shaking. We start to ask where Mike is. Before she can answer, he came out of the room on his hands and feet with black eyes, just staring at us. We all froze. None of us knew what to do. My brother then popped his neck and started running for us. My dad slammed the door shut and locked it. My brother started to run against it. My mom is screaming for it to get the hell out of her house, and I just kept repeating this while throwing things and stomping. Then it goes quiet. My dad opened the door, and my brother was passed out in front of the door with his nose bleeding. When my brother woke up, we told him everything. He didn't remember a thing. He remembers hearing screaming, then it all went black. He tells us all sorry, and then stays quiet the rest of the night. Nobody slept last night. We all called in and tried to figure something out. Now it is the next night, and it's 11 p.m., and we're hearing growling and scratching through the house. We can't do this again. Please help. I'll keep you all updated as soon as I can.